Thanks to Daniel for that report. And joining us now to discuss the Board of Peace is Foreign Affairs Analyst Gerard Filitti, who's an attorney specializing in international law. Gerard, thanks for joining us. I want to start by playing a clip from yesterday's press conference where Trump is asked if he wants his Board of Peace to replace the UN. Let's have a look at that.
Well, it might. I mean, the UN just hasn't been very helpful. I'm a big fan of the UN potential, but it has never lived up to its potential. The UN should have settled every one of the wars that I settled. I never went to them. I never even thought to go to them. They should be able to settle those wars. They don't. I believe you got to let the UN continue because the potential is so great.
Gerard, your reactions to that clip?
Well, what's interesting about the Board of Peace is that its charter nowhere mentions the word Gaza. It is envisioned as a broader organization that will help settle and bring about world peace in areas that are affected by or threatened by conflict. So I think that President Trump does envision his Board of Peace as being, if not a competition to or a replacement to, at least an organization that supplements the United Nations, which has indeed for many years failed to live up to its charter. It's created in many places where it's been involved a system of perpetual dependency, and it's institutionalized crises in many parts of the world, including the Middle East. So having a Board of Peace that steps outside of these old norms and tries things in a different way is, generally speaking, a good thing for the world.
Yeah, every time Trump speaks, it's quite interesting how he kind of hedges. And he said, he opens the clip by saying it could replace the UN, but then at the end, he really says, the UN does need to continue. But he has a well-documented past of clashing with the UN. And I think it was highlighted when he went for his latest address. Both the elevator and the teleprompter failed. Maybe a ghost in the machine. The White House thinks maybe, they were intentionally trying to either disrespect him or trip him up. Why do they have such opposition to each other, Trump and the UN?
Well, if you look at the structure of the United Nations itself, the most important body is the Security Council. And on the Security Council, you have Communist China and Russia. So it's very hard to have that pro-American, pro-democracy, positive free trade capitalist economy when you have two nations that are very authoritarian that can block everything. And then you look at the makeup of the United Nations. You have blocks of African countries, Asian countries, and Latin American countries, which are not always democracies. They're dictatorships, and they stand in opposition to a lot of the principles that we hold dear. So there is a lot of opposition to presidents like Trump, but not just Trump. We've had opposition to Democratic presidents as well. The United Nations tends not to be pro-American these days, and that's one thing that Trump rightly is pointing out.
And Gerard, moving to now Trump's vision for the Board of Peace, he's invited over 50 heads of state, and he's also put together an executive team that sort of sits above all of those members. So can you bring us up to speed on who's in, who's out, and the structure?
Well, the structure is meant to be, in a way, parallel to the United Nations, but with rotating membership. So a country can sign on for a term of 3 years. If a country provides $1 billion worth of funding, they get a permanent seat at the table. And that's kind of like the General Assembly, if you will, of the Board of Peace. Then you have the Board of Advisors, which include people like Jared Kushner, like Tony Blair, people who Donald Trump trusts and who are well-known international figures who actually have a history of getting results in conflict areas and of being able to facilitate aid. So you have a structure that allows for action, not just talk.
And then, very interestingly, Trump has invited Russia's Putin to be a member of the board. Is this a formality? Do you see a strategy behind the move? And is this potentially heading in the same direction that you described as trouble with the Security Council?
Well, we have yet to see how the executive committee functions in practice, but when you have it is organized more like a corporate structure. So you do have board members, but at the end of the day, it's the chairman of the board who sets the agenda. It would be Donald Trump who sets the agenda. So having Russia at the table is beneficial because it provides more money, more stability, more influence from other factors. You do need a Russian voice in some parts in this world. Syria, for example, is a country that has a lot of Russian interest in that region. So having Russian presence would help stabilize that area as well.
Trump seems like he's very focused on action, and as we look at his accomplishments over the last year, so he's putting this Board of Peace together. As you mentioned, it doesn't say in its charter anything specific to Gaza, but it was introduced in relation to how Gaza would move forward post-ceasefire. So how do you envision the future of Gaza?
You have to look at what Gaza was before. Gaza was in a system of dependency on Hamas and United Nations agencies, which kept the people basically in the same place. They didn't build up the economy. They didn't build up freedoms. They were kept in the same place, controlled by a terrorist group and indoctrinated into terror. You need something new. You need something different. So if you see a board of peace providing economic benefits, rebuilding in a way that doesn't give control to terrorist groups, rebuilding in a way that demilitarizes Hamas and other terrorist groups in Gaza, giving the people an opportunity to govern themselves. So that's really the difference between the board of peace and the United Nations. The United Nations is just throwing money at the problem, working through local groups like Hamas, a terrorist organization, instead of trying something new. The board of peace brings in new money, new people, and new ideas.
And Gerard, just as we finish up, Trump, of course, making a big, potentially provocative speech this morning in Davos. Macron from France has already declined to participate in the Board of Peace. How do you see all of this playing out?
I think with Macron and a lot of European leaders, if not skepticism, they have a vested interest in the United Nations. They've developed that organization for many decades now. They basically have more input into it than countries like the United States. So for them, not participating in the Board of Peace is sending a message that they don't want competition. But I think at the end of the day, they listen to what the United States has to say. We've been world leaders in promoting democracy. We've been stabilizing economies around the world for decades, and our trade partnership is second to none. So I think you will see Macron and other European leaders listen carefully to what Trump has to say and consider what he's offering.
I appreciate your analysis. A lot should take place this morning, and as the development of the Board of Peace goes through. Gerard Filitti, thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.